So it's interesting what you're talking about here today is something that's very close to my heart, and it's something that I'm immersed in on a daily basis. So I hope that the role I can play today is to be a bit of a question asker and prompting discussion for you in your various ministries, and as you're taking on this vision and trying to look at your parish through this vision. I'm hoping I can help navigate that path. This is what I do in the Archdiocese of Oklahoma City. I work for the Archdiocese and oversee all of the offices for evangelization and catechesis. But one of the primary things that I'm doing is helping us as an archdiocese do strategic pastoral planning. So what you're doing in your parish is what we're trying to help all of our 110 parishes begin a process of this. So I'm very excited to see the progress that you're making, the kinds of things that you're developing, the tools and the resources. And in some ways, I want to help you understand how far ahead of things you really are here. How many of you were involved with the training that was in the Dallas area a couple of years ago for Real Life Catholic? Did any of you go up there with Father Jonathan and some of the other people? Because I think that was there was a whole group from the parish here that came to that training. I think that was almost 2 years ago now. I was able to be a part of working with that group, and I know that a lot of the efforts of a vision for discipleship and shifting the culture of things in the parish here was beginning way back then, right? So I mean, in some ways, the greatest pain of my life on a week-to-week basis is working with parishes that have no concept of this whatsoever. And so to walk into a place where you've got staff members standing up and showing the kinds of images, and maybe I should get the gangsters off this screen. Seeing the kinds of progress that you've made is greatly inspiring. So very excited to see all of that. So here's what I would like to do. I'm going to have 2 opportunities with you today. And again, I really see myself in the role of asking some important questions. So the first question that I want to ask you, which I think is the most important one, is why? Joshua did a really good job of laying out the vision for the parish and giving some definition to that, right? I think you leaned on what I would consider to be the driving mission statement for the whole church. Go make disciples. We find that in Matthew 28. Jesus said, all power, all authority has been, in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So we're familiar with that passage. And I like the way that you've kind of put a nuance on that by saying, be disciples and make disciples. Right? That there's a fundamental reality that there's 2 sides to this, right? But I guess I want to ask even a deeper question. Why? Yes, that is the mission of the church. Make disciples. But I don't know if that's going to be compelling enough for you. Most of you have full-time jobs, have families, juggling responsibilities in your life, and your life on a week-to-week basis, sometimes a day-to-day basis, can be like what my night was like yesterday. I'm driving all over the place over several hours just trying to find a hotel room, and nothing's working out, right? If I Well, if I can go, I don't think I can go backwards, can I? Yes. So this kid, far right, Daniel, he's our senior in high school, last week totaled his car. Thank God he's okay, which was the most important thing, right? But this kind of stuff happens in life all the time, doesn't it? Where you have kids and bills and things break down and you got responsibilities and you've got your job and now at the parish they're trying to give you additional responsibilities to help make disciples and get you all caught up in what we're doing in the church. Why? Why do we do this? I don't think we could have had a better start to the day than the testimony from Russell. I think his sharing probably, if you're anything like me, I mean, it gripped me at the heart. There was a couple of times where I'm like tearing up, sitting back there listening to him share about how deeply his life has been impacted by this. Right? Why are we doing this? Why does the church exist? Yes, in a certain way you can say this. Because Jesus told us to. But I think I want to get even deeper underneath this as a motivator in a way that I think will help us all, right? I think our mission is to make disciples. Why? Because the world really needs them. The world needs more people like Russell. Would you agree?
Yes.
Right? Now, this is a strange time in history to speak to something like this. Because right now, it's almost like the Catholic Church is standing there with its clothes dirty and a black eye with the scandal and all of the things that have emerged over the past couple of months. And I personally believe it's going to get worse. I don't think this is over. Being in a role like I'm in the Archdiocese, this is a part of my daily reality, sometimes my hourly reality. And there's more stuff that's going to come to light that is going to discredit, that's going to make us look even worse than we look right now. That can leave us a little disillusioned. That can leave us struggling with, why are we doing what we're doing? Well, I would come back to this fundamental reality. The world is a much better place when there's authentic disciples in it. The things that are happening in the church, the scandals that have emerged, the leaders that have made the kinds of choices that have led to some of this, I would argue, are not authentic disciples. People who are not authentic disciples have the potential to do great harm. We see that in the secular world all the time, right? We see people who can do massive amounts of destruction. People who have given themselves over to complete evil, right? But trust me, there's no greater harm than somebody who's divided. There's no greater harm than somebody who pretends to be an authentic disciple, but actually deep inside isn't. They've allowed themselves to continue to be controlled and manipulated by a pattern of sin or by a habit or by some deep-seated weakness. They actually haven't let the power of the gospel come to bear in every area of their life. But I would encourage us, as hard as it is to face the reality of where we sit today, I would encourage us with the truth that throughout her history, the Catholic Church has been a powerful force for the good. We have been a source of creative genius in the world. We've got scientists and doctors and nurses and teachers. We've built schools and universities and hospitals. We've served the poor. We've done disaster relief. We have been an enormous force for good. Would you agree? And we cannot let that good be completely robbed from us because of the weakness of some of these people that, frankly, the enemy is using to try and rip the legs out from underneath us. Amen? Here's the basic reality, and I'll kind of stop at this point because I'm probably going on longer than I needed to. But here's the basic point. The whole agenda of the enemy in the modern period and what we would call, where we live right now is in what's called postmodern era. But the whole agenda of the enemy is to try and rip the legs out from underneath God. Think about the pressure, the secular pressure around religion and around faith. What is the drive? To try and make it down to earth. To try and de-supernaturalize faith. Faith isn't something that's divine. It's a human crutch. It's something that people who are weak lean on to try and help themselves get through life. You can go back to early philosophers like Friedrich Nietzsche and others who have made these statements that have actually become predominant philosophical viewpoints in our modern world. And the whole agenda, which I think is bigger than any one philosopher or any key thinker, it's actually an agenda that's manipulated by the enemy. If we don't understand this why, if we don't have some conviction in us about what is faith all about, if we actually let ourselves be sold by the modern, postmodern agenda, right? That faith is just a social thing. This is just something that we do. This is where people need to have somewhere to go on Sunday mornings because they don't have work. So you go to Mass or you join the religion of soccer, right? And you just go to soccer matches on Sunday now instead of church. Do you see how easily that can happen? If faith is allowed to be de-supernaturalized and church is just something that I do that's part of my social life, it's a club that I belong to, then, I could belong to the soccer club, or I could belong to the football club, or I could belong to some other social club. It's just another thing out there, right? This is what the enemy would love to see happen. And if we forget what the faith really is all about, the ultimate point of our life here on earth is that we might be changed, transformed into creatures worthy of union with God. That we might learn self-emptying love modeled after Jesus, and so come into the fullness of our humanity, ready to embrace eternal destiny. This is the whole point of our existence. And it maps perfectly with what faith is all about. Jesus didn't come down and become human so that we could become nice people. The whole point of faith, the whole proposition of faith isn't just so that we can be good people, nice to each other. The whole proposition of the faith is so that we could become divine. It's not enough to just be a good person. Yes, you could get there on natural human ability. You could become a good, nice person. That's not the point of faith. The point of faith is that we could become like God. Jesus became man so man could become God, St. Irenaeus says. Father said in one of the prayers at the end of Mass today, so that we can become partakers in divine nature. This is what our faith is all about. And actually, one of the greatest tragedies of our human existence, the tragedy of the human race and the source of all our suffering, is that we have turned from the one who is our rightful ruler, our rightful leader, the one whose rule brings life and freedom, and have instead set ourselves in his place. Every single person in this room is a leader. You may not see yourselves as a leader. This is a leadership summit, so I'm kind of hoping that you do. But every single person here is a leader, not just because of the ministry that you serve in, not just because of the role that you have, but you actually are a leader because God's called you to follow him. And once you follow him, you now have a responsibility to go and call other people to follow him. Be disciples, make disciples. By virtue of the nature of discipleship, every person who's called to be a disciple is called to be a leader. If you're going to be a leader, you got to know who you're following. You got to follow the one who's worthy of following. And following him means putting him on the throne and allowing every area of your life to come into submission to him. But the driving agenda of postmodernism is get Jesus off the chair, get him off the throne, get him out of the ruler position. And who takes his place? Me. I'm the ruler of my own life. I'm my own God. I make my own rules. I chart my own way. Right? I mean, this is the society, the culture that we live in today. Leaders understand that Jesus is the right ruler, the rightful ruler. He's the one that I follow. And now that I'm following him, now I can go and get other people to follow him too. Does that make sense? So when we talk about why, right, I think it's important to understand what is the proposition of faith. Yes, we're about making disciples. But far, far more important, we have a message to bear. That what faith is all about is that Jesus Christ came to break the hold of the enemy. What our Catholic faith is about, the gift that it is to the world, is that Jesus died on the cross, went down into the pits of hell, and stole from Satan the keys, and then rose from the dead with the keys in hand. Satan no longer has hold over us. Patterns of sin no longer have hold over us. Sickness and death no longer has hold over us. Jesus broke the hold of the enemy. And then he restores humanity to its original purity. And only by doing that does he allow us to have the capacity to become divine. If we don't accept what Jesus did for us, if we don't let him break the hold of the enemy in our life, then we can't accept the divine nature that God wants to put on us. And then he's here to deal with the rest of the world. The world, the flesh, the devil. I mean, in a very, very simple way, this is a big theological concept, but I'm trying to give it to us in a nutshell. This is what Jesus does. This is what the Catholic faith is all about. In some ways you could say, I'm stretching a little bit here theologically, but you could say this is about what all Christianity is about. Because every Christian faith Protestant, evangelical, they would all resonate with these three things. What makes us different as Catholics? Yeah, we're the only ones that actually talk about this like, okay, we're going to take God's life and actually put it inside us. We're going to eat it every single day if you want to. We're going to give you the sacrament of reconciliation where grace can literally be poured into you and into your brokenness and into your sinfulness whenever you want to go and access that sacrament. I personally believe the Catholic Church, of all Christian denominations, does this far more powerfully, far more richly, far more beautifully than any Christian denomination. Does that make sense? We have so much to offer. This isn't a club that you would give up to go watch a soccer game. And we've lost this somehow. We've lost the kind of passion when Russell stands up here and starts breaking down, choking up with emotion at the power that God has brought forth in his life. Like, where is that in the church today? We should be coming alive with this power, wanting to share it with other people. But I think something's been lost in us. Like, and it makes sense, right? Because the postmodern agenda, the way that the enemy's doing this, the way we just keep getting punched and punched and punched by the secular agenda that tries to de-supernaturalize, right? We want to take away this. We want to downplay this. We want to not talk about this. Why? Why are we here? Why are we doing what we're doing? So I want you in your table groups. If you look on your schedule, there's a question there. What does it mean to be a Christ-centered leader? And again, I tried to do it in a nutshell, right? I tried to give us, in a nutshell, a lens, if you will. I think what I just said is Jesus' perspective on the world. If we had an opportunity to sit down with him and he said, this is why you're doing what you're doing. Because I want to break the hold of the enemy in people's lives. I want to restore people to their original purity. And I want to deal with the world that's all around them and even in them, in their own flesh. I want to bring this liberating power of the gospel to bear in people's everyday life. And I want to use you to do it. Follow me. Come be my disciple. But then I want to use you to go make other disciples and to invite other people to come into this liberating, powerful truth and freedom. What is that lens? Christ-centered leadership. What does that mean to you? How do you resonate with that in your heart? And can you begin to see yourself as a leader like that? So I want you to talk about that at your tables right now. Okay, I'd like to give you another question to reflect on. Look up here with me. What have I been given? The first question is leading. How do I see myself through that Christ-centered leadership and that his lens on leadership? But then the second question is, what have I been given in order to do that? I find that gifts can kind of fit into four different categories. Spiritual gifts, which those don't necessarily depend upon me. Those are gifts that God gives, but they're kind of at my disposal to use. Natural gifts, we typically refer to these as talents. I have some talents and natural gifts that come to bear. Circumstances of life would be a third category. What are the circumstances of my life that allow me to that contribute to how I can help. Right? Some of us have been blessed with more financial resources than others, and can be generous with those resources to help. Some have been gifted with other things, authority or place in society or influence or athletic ability or like those circumstances of life, I think are a contributing part to what I've been given. And then fourth, this might fall maybe as a subcategory under natural gifts, but I think personality, temperament is a part of this, right? My wife is a complete extrovert, and she has this unique gift and ability to make friends with anybody everywhere in a way that just amazes me and boggles my mind all at the same time. We're the last people to ever leave anywhere we ever go. And it typically is with me out in the car, sitting there waiting and sending text messages like, when are you coming? Right? I'm a complete introvert. I'm complete opposite. And I actually run out of my ability, really a capacity to talk at a certain point where I just like, okay, I don't have anything else to say. And I'm just going to walk away now because I'll start getting physically ill if I keep trying. What have I been given? Right? So there's a question on here. How do we lead from our natural gifts, acquired abilities, personal charisms? I would emphasize, don't forget that our gifts in a unique way, it's very important to understand this, right? Our gifts are not ours. They were given to us by God to be used to serve others. So everything in the lens, a spiritual lens, the way God looks at us, the way he looks at life, nothing's really just for us, for its own sake. Right? Like God gives something to us as a gift, but he wants to use it to bless others. Right? So how do you lead with those gifts, with those abilities? What are some of your natural gifts? What are some of your, maybe even the circumstances of your life? How can those come to bear in the role that you play in leadership? And how does God want to use those things? Okay? So that's the next question I want you to discuss a little bit at your tables. And we're at the end of our time frame here, so we're going to kind of roll right into lunch here. So if you're finding yourself at your tables not finished, and there's people that didn't get a chance to talk, that's actually a good thing. We're going to carry conversation right over into the lunch break, and you can continue talking. The third question is, look at the third question there. How do you see your ministry through the parish, through your parish mission filter? Remember the mission, in welcoming all, we form disciples who know, love, and serve God and neighbor. Joshua shared that kind of simplified version. Be disciples, make disciples. So that might be a simpler way of saying this. But this is the parish mission. How do you see what you're doing? How do you see your ministry through this filter? And I think even resonating with a little bit of the why, right? Why are we doing what we're doing? Well, it's to bring the powerful message of the gospel actually really to bear. This isn't just a club. This has everything to do with everything about life, right? In that big picture, like how does that lens come through in your ministry?